still may be joining. Good morning, folks, or good afternoon, wherever you may be sitting. Welcome to the National Conversation on Aging and Care, presented by APlan2Age. My name is Richard Wexler, the co-founder and CEO of our nonprofit, APlan2Age. With me is Steph Baierl. She is our CIO. And we are your tour guides on this aging journey. So I have a question for all of you. Where are we on July 29th, 2025? Well, the future of aging is now. We've got some pretty staggering numbers. We have the oldest baby boomers turning 80. We have over 100 million people in this country, 50 and older. Let that sink in for a second. And according to a brand new report by the AARP and the National Alliance for Caregiving, these caregiving numbers are staggering as well. In the last 10 years, we've seen a 45% increase in the number of caregivers. And I think the number I'm about to give you is actually pretty conservative. We have now over 63 million Americans who are caregivers. That's 25% of our population in that role. 40% of caregivers live with their care recipient. That's insane. Nearly 30% of caregivers have provided care for 5 years or more. I mean, think about that number. On average, spending 27 hours per week providing care. Almost a quarter, about 25%, of our country is spending 40 hours or more providing that care. And guess what? Most of us have to work. Caregivers are increasingly juggling responsibilities of home, caregiving, work, and over 70% are caregiving while in the workforce. And I have some new numbers, and these numbers are only getting worse. More people, more caregivers are handling medical or nursing tasks. They were never doing that in the past, such as managing catheters, performing injections, or monitoring vital signs. Aging, a journey that hopefully all of us will take, a journey with thought, planning, and through conversations. It can be peaceful and enjoyable. APlan2Age was built from the personal and professional experience of our founders. My life changed in the summer of '05. Married later, 2 small kids, all 4 parents with us between my wife and myself. We thought they were doing great. Then all of a sudden we started getting phone calls. They were seriously ill. That created a 14-year journey of care for them while we raised our young children, took care of them, nurtured a marriage, tried to stay employed, and tried to earn money. And I know Steph, our CIO, is experiencing something herself. Steph?
Yeah, so the first time that I actually spoke with Richard, I was sitting at Mayo Clinic with my parents. We were waiting for my dad's official diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's disease. We're 2 years further into our journey now and still actively learning what care actually means and looks like, especially with an emphasis on a pre-retirement age. My mom still works full-time. She's also his full-time caregiver. So we're strategizing creative ways to ensure quality and comfort for my dad while still being able to secure a financial independence for her retirement.
And also Peter Ross, my co-founder and the board president of APlan2Age. He's also the co-founder and CEO of Senior Helpers. He started Senior Helpers because of his experience with his own mother. She was living in Portland, Maine, where she grew up. He was living in New York. She was getting older and started to develop issues with some of her ADLs, activities of daily living. He looked for home care options, really couldn't find her, didn't want to do the next thing, but moved her into a long-term care facility. He had no choice to make, but to make that move. After she passed, he vowed if he ever started his own business, it would be a home care business. He wanted to make sure that families had the option of taking care of family members, friends at home and letting them age in place. So he and his business partner started Senior Helpers. Hey, you guys ever had a phone call like this? Hey, this is Bob.
Hey Bob, it's Mary. I know it's been a while. How are you?
Mary, it's great to hear your voice. Doing great. Are you still in Minnesota?
Yeah, we're still here, at least until the kids are out of school. We're doing great. Jim is great, and the kids are doing well. I know I said this before, but Bob, you were the best boss I've ever had.
Oh, Mary, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, I was really sorry to hear about Linda a couple years ago. How are you doing?
It was tough. She was ill for 2 years. It got rough at the end, but I know she's in a better place now.
I'm so sorry you guys had to go through that. You were an awesome couple. Hey, part of the reason why I'm actually calling you, my brother texted me this morning that our mom fell. She's now in the ER and he's on his way there, but I'm not going to be able to fly out until later tonight. She's still in Denver where I grew up. But once I get there, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. They think that she broke her hip. She probably needs surgery. She's 82 and she's never even been admitted to the hospital before.
Wow. Mary, everything I went through with Linda, and I've also been attending this nonprofit, APlan2Age, has these conversations on aging and care, and I've learned a little bit. I may be able to fill in some of the blanks as what's coming next if you're open to hearing this stuff.
That would be great, Bob. I'm all ears.
Well, once your mom gets through surgery, my guess is they'll probably keep her in the hospital for a few days, then they'll discharge her.
Oh, well, that won't be too bad. She's still living in the same condo. My dad passed a few years ago, but other than this, she's been pretty independent.
My guess is they're going to want her to go to a rehab place, probably skilled nursing.
Is that one of those old folks' homes?
No, no, it's actually a place where she's going to get a lot of help. My guess is when she gets there, she'll still be in a wheelchair. They're going to want to get her to a walker, make sure she can walk up and down the halls before she can leave skilled. Have you and your brother ever talked with mom about something like this happening?
No, we talked with each other about bringing it up, but we never had the conversation with mom.
Wow. When she leaves Skilled, and I'm guessing she's probably there for a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. You guys are going to have choices. You could bring her back to her condo, but being a condo, I'm not sure if that's going to work. Are there stairs?
Hmm. Yeah, there are a few stairs to get into her front door, and her bedroom and bathroom are both on the second floor.
Wow. Her place probably isn't going to work. I mean, she may be recovering for months or more, and the stairs and the bathroom on the second, that's not going to work. I mean, you have other choices. You could move her to an assisted living if she agrees, or she could move in with you. What's your house like?
All of our bedrooms are upstairs too, so that wouldn't work out.
Wow, you guys are kind of stuck. I mean, an assisted living may be your only option. I mean, they're really nice. I looked at some with Linda, but they're not cheap.
Do you have any ballpark idea of how much those would cost?
Yeah, I mean, in Denver, you're probably looking at just the cost of a room, minimum 5,000 a month, and then the cost of care on top of that.
Oh, we cannot afford that. She is on Medicare. I'm thinking that should cover it, right?
No, Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care like that. I actually found that out the hard way. That's why I keep hearing people talk about a need to plan for the cost of care.
Hmm. Well, if we're able to bring her back home and somehow make that work, we could probably bring help in for her. I imagine that wouldn't cost too much.
Well, you're probably looking at where she is at least 40 an hour. I mean, can you stay with her for quite a while and help defray those costs?
that is more than I expected, especially if she needs around the clock care. But I can only be there for a few days and I have to fly back. I have to get back to work. I don't know what we're gonna do. I wish we planned ahead for this.
Wow, folks. I mean, a conversation that a lot of you may have already had, a lot of you may have in the future. I keep asking this question. How in the world are we going to house and care for over 100 million people that are 50 and older? You know, my gut, and this may startle some of you, if we keep doing exactly what we're doing, we're simply going to fail. So we are creating what we're calling a plan to age aging coaches. We're trying to get, and this is a big word coming, everybody, millions of people, creating an army of aging coaches to have a conversational knowledge gained from personal experience and also attending these conversations on aging and care. And if a friend, a family member, a neighbor, a coworker is open to it, impart that knowledge like Bob did. Folks, please remember our site is here to help, aplan2age.org. Remember the two is actually the number two. You're going to find the family conversation in there. What is it? How to start it? How it works. You're also going to find the family care plan, a template you can download and you can also update. And folks, we are going to start now with some of the presenters that we have put together. And first up is Debbie Dale. She's a wealth advisor and is going to be talking to you about financial planning. Debbie, are you ready to go?
I am ready. Thank you for having me, Richard. I think what you're doing is extremely important. A little background about me. I've been in the financial service industry for over 30 years. I specialized in long-term care planning for quite a bit of my career and then have transitioned into full retirement planning. To me, this is very personal as well. Just recently, I lost my father, and watching the toll caretaking took on my stepmom. She's she's got a long road to recovery herself, as many people know who are caregivers. That takes a big toll on people. So, as far as financial planning and long-term care costs, to me, protection is the foundation of any good financial plan. So, as a wealth advisor, I can help you grow wealth. That is my job. But if I don't have protection in place for people, that house is going to crumble. And I know Patrick's going to cover a lot of this, so I'm going to make it fairly brief. The reality is 70% of us 65, I'm not quite there yet, but close, 65 and older are going to need some sort of long-term care at some point in your lives. And a nursing home, as you, Richard, you touched on assisted living, nursing home costs are $100,000 average, and that's just average. So that means, especially on the coast, you're going to have much higher than that. The lower are going to be, your Arkansas and those kinds of states. Biggest mistake people make is waiting to plan for this. They wait until they have a health crisis. I've seen this far too many times when I was solely doing long-term care insurance, that I would get a call, and I finally asked one agent if he was standing at the door of a nursing home to find these clients. At that point, we can't help you. So you need to start with these conversations, just as you alluded to in your conversation there. You need to start having these conversations with your parents, with your spouse, with even your children, and let them know. Best place to start is asking, would you prefer to stay at home, be in a facility, and at least that will help us as planners help you decide what's going to be the best course of action. The biggest thing about planning for this type of event, a long-term care event, is, and the thing that really needs to go home, it's not about placing somebody in a nursing home. It's about giving you the choices and maintaining your dignity when those times come. You want to estimate some future costs. We do have calculators that can help with that. And then we need to review your income and your asset protection strategy. So let's go over, you know, your buckets, your liquid assets, your whatever you have in your bank, your brokerage accounts, retirement income streams is going to come into play, because even though you may need to get some sort of insurance, you still have income hopefully coming in your retirement. I mean, that's my job. Real estate or other illiquid assets. We need to bring in reverse mortgages, for example, into the conversation, because that can help pay for some of that care. The funding options, again, I'm just going to touch on this because this is something that Patrick's going to be talking about, I believe, in further conversation. You know, just the different types of long-term care insurance there are now. From when I first started in the business, it was basically your traditional long-term care. Now there's so many other options available to people that can be very cost effective. Something else, legal and family considerations. Please make sure that, I mean, this is one thing I ask every single client I first meet with. Do you have a will or a trust? Because that is so important. You know, we need to have powers of attorney in place. You need to have both power of attorney and I'm just reading Leah's note here. Medical power of attorney is extremely important. Right now, that's something I'm working on with my own mother, is to make sure she gets her power of attorney. She wants one. I'm not with her physically down in Southern California where she is, but I have a sibling that's there. So she's going to take the medical. I'm going to take the financial power of attorney for obvious reasons. Just I think we just need to take the fear away of planning for this, because it's just a reality. I mean, it's about choice. It's about dignity. It's about protecting what you've worked for. It's just, like I say, the earlier we plan, the more control you'll have and the more options you'll keep open.
Yep.
So that is pretty much in the chat. Was somebody has a gold policy and I've got the same thing. I'm fortunate that I was in the business a long time ago and was able to get one of the policies that's no longer available. So my husband and I don't have any children. It's us. Not that I would rely on them anyway, but we've got our plan in place, and it gives me a great peace of mind. So
No, that's awesome. And I thank you, Debbie. And this is great advice. And folks, as we teach aging coaches, and probably one of the best pieces of advice, and Debbie talked about it, is getting to this early. I've been having some pretty tough conversations with financial planners for 20 years now to really understand the options for care, understand what it costs, understand we're not just planning for retirement, we're planning for this tiny little word called care and this tiny little word called cost. And you never know when a family member, grandma, grandpa, close Uncle Charlie, maybe calling you knowing you're 35, you're making money, and all of a sudden they need help affording care. Our next presenter is Peter Ross, our co-founder and board president. Unfortunately, he's got a really tight schedule this week, so he and I recorded a message, and I think Steph is going to play that right now. Hello, I'm excited. We have Peter Ross joining us. As we've talked about, my co-founder, the co-founder of Senior Helpers and the CEO of Senior Helpers. And Peter, I wanted to spend a couple minutes and ask you a few questions about care in the home. Really broad question. I know there's quite a few services you can get in the home. Can you talk about that for a couple minutes?
Absolutely, Richard. Great to be here. When you look at care in the home, obviously something that Senior Helpers focuses on is, helping with activities of daily living. So as people age, they have challenges with certain things that we all take for granted as we're younger. They start to have some challenges with those, whether it could be toileting, any kind of ambulatory movement, grooming, eating, all those types of fun things. So we're able to, go in and assess the situation and develop a customized care plan for them, provide that, what I would call that non-clinical care in the home. But there's also lots of other care options for families, dealing with home health services if they're coming off some kind of a surgery or illness, that was a hospitalization per se. They can get a home health services. There's therapeutic services such as speech therapy, occupational and physical therapy that's available within the home for people that are dealing, with a end of life situation or terminal illness. There's hospice that's available at home. Those are all combinations that kind of keep people healthy at home, Richard, and things that we really work on to provide that care because families really want to live out their life in their own home.
Talking about that, what are the benefits to the care recipient for getting these services right where they live?
The major benefit for them is they basically retain their independence. And people want to live out their life in their own home. Over 90%, according to AARP, want to live out their life in their own home. And it could go from all the care services I talked about, as well as services like home modifications. Sometimes your house is fantastic when you're growing up a family, but as you age in that home, stairs, bathroom locations, shower access, those types of things have to be modified to make it easier for you to stay at home. The key is to keep people safe at home, but really my whole thing was always try to retain your independence. People want to age in place. They still want to do all the things they've done their whole life. And by getting these types of care, they can continue to do those things while still aging in place in their own home.
So let's talk about senior helpers specifically. So who are the folks that you're actually sending into the home? Who are those caregivers?
Well, their caregivers vary in age and background and ethnicity. But one of the things that's really critical as senior helpers is the ability for us to have highly skilled caregivers. We do that through what we call Center of Excellence. Those Center of Excellence are located all across our system in every office where we train caregivers on what they're going to do actually in the home before they go in the home. And even if a caregiver tells us they've done caregiving before, we're still going to train them on the devices they could be using, the equipment they could be using, their ability to do transfers within the home to make sure that they're qualified to do that. Many times in this industry, when I started senior helpers, the industry was called non-medical, non-skilled, and I've never really been a proponent of either one of those terms. In fact, I would tell you, two negatives do not make a positive. I talk about our services as non-clinical, highly skilled. Our whole motto as senior helpers is we wouldn't put a caregiver with your family unless we put it with our own mother. So we really want to make sure that those caregivers are highly trained. They really become an augmentation to the family. They're really become part of the family. They're taking great care of your loved one, and it's very important that they're highly trained and highly skilled.
No, that's fantastic. So another broad question, what do you see as the future of care in the home? And again, how will that impact the care recipient?
I think the future of home care, along with all the services I've already mentioned, what's really going to play a role is technology in the home. And when you have services such as senior helpers that might be in the home 25 or 30 hours a week, last time I checked, Richard, there's 168 hours in a week. That means there's a lot of time when we're not there. That's why in our Center of Excellence is we actually train the family caregiver for free. We want to train them on how to be great caregivers too. They're already doing the work. Let's make sure they can follow the same care plan that our caregivers are doing. But in addition to that, we want to really introduce technology into the home. We're testing technology that can detect situations that are happening in the home, such as a fall. They can detect with vital sign monitoring potential urinary tract infections, dehydration. The whole goal we have as an organization, as an industry, is really to prevent seniors from going into the hospital. We want to prevent ER visits. We want to prevent rehospitalization if they've already come out. We don't want them to go back in. So we really want to provide the services we can and do that by giving round the clock type of care. The only way you do that is combining caregiving with technology to keep monitoring to make sure that senior and that loved one is safe.
That's fantastic. And my final question, a plan to age, we're all about planning, we're all about preparation. How should an individual or a family prepare for care in the home?
I think a plan to age, and why I love putting this together with you, Richard, is that, as you and I have talked about, people plan their vacation to the utmost minute, but they don't plan to how to age in this country. There's so many things we can do proactively as a family to get things lined up, for us and for that aging journey. And that's really why it's so important to prepare so that you know what your options are. Financially, who's going to pay for it. All those things have to be answered so that if you have that plan as you age, when things happen within your life that are normal parts of aging, that you are prepared and say, no, we've already prepared for that. We already have a living will. We already have a health directive. We already have a power of attorney. We already have the knowledge of what Medicare does, what Medicare Advantage would pay for. If I'm a veteran, would the Veterans Administration help us? Is there a long-term care policy that we could buy earlier in life so that we would have that to not to be a burden to our children? So I really believe it's like the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. Unfortunately, in our society, we all know we're going to age. We just don't want to face it. And the more that we can be able to have a conversation, which is why I love a plan to age, is family conversation and developing a care plan that the families can modify and work with, that really allows them to be prepared for those types of things when they happen. So it's less disruption to the family, it's less disruption for the care recipient. And that's really important. And that's why it's so exciting to be able to launch a plan to age and make it available to everybody in the country for free.
Thank you for joining us on our first national conversation on aging.
Thank you, Richard. My pleasure.
Okay, folks, a lot of information so far, great information from Debbie. Obviously, most people want to stay in the home. Is that realistic from the perspective of the home? Is it a condo like Mary's mom had? Is it a house? Can they afford it? Great information from Peter. Our next presenter is Erin Dwyer Bush. She is a senior housing placement specialist, and we're going to address the other options for care, and that's senior housing. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you having me on. Yes, so the other alternative to staying in your home would be moving to a community. But which one do you choose? It's very overwhelming. There's a lot of different options out there. And depending on your state and the licensing, it's going to be different state to state. So if you're looking at, moving mom closer to a brother in Colorado, it might look way different than California or Missouri. So each state is different. But a little background on me. So I've owned Senior Care Authority for 7 years now. I call myself a senior care advisor and elder care strategist. And the unique thing about my team and myself is that we can help families pivot. So if they want to stay at home, great, we can help them. And if they change to wanting to move to a community or have to, we can help them through that as well. So basically what the process looks like on the placement side, so helping find residential care communities, independent living, assisted living, memory care. In Missouri, we have this thing called ICF, which is intermediate care facilities, which is just a step down below skilled. They can do almost anything that skilled can do. They just don't have a 24/7 nurse on the premises. And then we have the skilled care. So basically how we work is it starts out with a discovery call. So we're talking to usually the caregiving spouse or the adult child. Sometimes it's the client that needs the care themselves, but it's usually the caregiving spouse or adult children. And you're just basically having a phone call to find out, what are they looking for? Are they in crisis mode? We can definitely help when it's a crisis, but there are fewer options. So you're working on speed. Rather than if you have a plan, we always say it's never too early to plan. So if you have plan A and plan B, figured out, then you have more options and more choices. But we can help in a crisis. So we're finding out what's going on. Is mom in the hospital? Did she have a fall? Is this just pre-planning? Is dad the caregiver and he got sick and can't take care of mom anymore? What's the situation? And then if it seems like a good fit and they are leaning towards possibly moving into a community, then what we do is we do a full assessment. So it's about a 45-minute to an hour. We prefer to go in the home to be able to see the client in their own environment. But if not, we can do it virtually. But we're finding out about those ADLs. There's activities of daily living. What level of care do we think they really need? If you don't need any help with any assistance during the day, then assisted living doesn't make sense. So that would be more independent living, or maybe 1-floor condo kind of a situation. So after that assessment, we discussed options. What fits their budget? What fits their geographical region? Do they have pets? Are they a veteran? Is money going to be tight? Do we need to be creative? Do they have a long-term care insurance plan? Do they have powers of attorney? We're asking all of those questions. And if they don't have those things, then we're referring them to those resources. So go see a lawyer for your power of attorney. If you don't have a long-term care policy, for mom and dad, it's too late for them, but maybe for the adult child, they're going to think about that. And then being creative with financing. Do we need to talk about a life settlement? Do we need to talk about, cashing in a life insurance policy, selling a home, all of that. So after we do that and we research the communities, what we're doing is we're scouring those state reports. So at least in Missouri, every licensed community, so assisted living, memory care, ICFs, and skilled, they are listed on our state website. And so all their citations and deficiencies are there. So we go through those and we let the families know. This is what's going on. They had a citation here, they had a deficiency here, it got taken care of, or it's still an open case, so that the families can make an educated decision. It's not our decision. And I'm going to tell you the good, bad, and the ugly about each one of the communities that we're possibly going to be touring so that you can make an informed decision. But then we, narrow it down to a couple, 3 or 4 that we go tour with the family. We go with them. We provide the family with questions that they can ask. If they've never been through this process, they have no idea what to ask about staffing ratios and, levels of care. Is it all inclusive? All of those things. So we provide them the questions. We go with them on the tours. And then after we go on some tours, we sit down and we talk about it. We have a comparison chart. Community A had this, community B had this, and community C had this. What did you like better? Well, I like this about this, but I really didn't like this at B, and C is really close to my house. We discuss all of those things. And then after that, if they make a decision about where they want to move, then we help them with that process. Okay, what paperwork do we need to do the move-in? We need a doctor's order. We need the most recent history and physical. Do we need shot records? The lease agreement, we can look through that. Does long-term care cover it? What is your payout? We look through all of that. And we help them with the resources on the move, because once they make that decision, they're kind of deer in the headlights. They're like, okay, well, now we got to move mom out of her house for 45 years and all this stuff. And they get overwhelmed. And I said, let's just, take it one step at a time, but we help with those resources too, moving resources, estate sales. Do we need to do some kind of quick sale? Is the house not in good repair? Do they need a real estate agent? We help with the organizing and all of that. We get those resources so that they can move to the community and not have to worry about it. We try to be there on moving day, or at least, a day or 2 after, to make sure that there's a smoother transition. And we are the liaison between the community and the family. So we don't work for the community. I don't work for Brookdale. I don't work for Sunrise. I work for the family. So if there is something that's promised and not delivered, then I'm the one that's on them about doing that. And I help manage expectations on both sides. We help the family figure out, well, when's a good time to move in? For example, it's a really good time to move your loved one in right before lunch. So if you can get like a 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock move in during the week, weekends are horrible. They're less staff. Don't do it during the weekend. But, move mom in 10:30, you ease her in, the apartment's already set up, it's already got her favorite things, and then you can kind of ease her out, move her to the lunchroom, and then you kind of ease out and you can check back again later. So we walk through the family on how this is most successful for your loved one to move in. But we also negotiate rates. That's another thing. So if a budget is tight, we can also say, hey, are you willing to, knock off the care level? The family's really close to this budget. We're willing to negotiate, and we a lot of times can get it too. So we have good relationships with the communities, and our commissions are paid by the communities 99% of the time. So the families aren't paying us a fee. And I think somebody had asked a question. Let me see in the chat.
The name of your company again.
My
and-
company it's a franchise, and I own the St. Louis location, but it's Senior Care Authority.
Cool.
So that is why.
No, and I very much thank you. I mean, folks, a lot of you are going to go, I know all this information. Well, that's great. And we wanted to make sure that you know it, because I can almost guarantee the family, friends, neighbors, coworkers you're going to be talking to, as I have, don't. So just reinforcing all this knowledge that we're putting out there, from planning for care, planning for the cost, in-home care, moving someone to a community. If people that know me for a long time, I work around 3 4-letter words. The first one, plan. The last two, both C words, care and cost. And we're going to address that cost, and one way to pay for it, with our next presenter. Patrick Johnson, are you there, sir?
Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being on the call. I think the key component to know that income paid out of long-term care policies are tax-free to the consumer. And we've got 7 minutes. I'm going to quickly describe the 4 types of plans a consumer could purchase today. These plans all provide a daily benefit. Let's just say $200 a day to start. They also provide a length that this benefit will be available or paid out, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They usually have some sort of elimination period, like 90 days, and they do offer an inflation option, say 3 to 5%. So as Deb mentioned earlier, consumers have many options today that they didn't have before for choice, control, and flexibility. Okay. The first type of plan most people are familiar with is called a traditional plan. They've been around the longest, and they're typically paid for on a monthly basis. I call these cash flow plans because it depends on how much the consumer can afford to spend on a monthly basis, say $500 a month. There's no residue value to the beneficiary upon death, like life insurance or an annuity value. These plans only pay out if you go on claim. When applying for a policy, you're going to have a long-term care underwriter look at your medical records and the application. And the key here is a word called morbidity, which means what are the chances you're going to go on claim? And today, the direction of long-term care underwriting is kind of a yay or a nay. There's not a lot of underwriting classifications like life insurance has. The second plan is called a hybrid. They combine a long-term care policy and a small tax-free death benefit. These plans have been around for about 25 years. The key to this plan today is all the various ways a consumer can purchase. When these first came out, you could only do a single pay, like $100,000. Now a consumer can do a single pay, a 5 pay, 10 pay, and based on your age, pay to 65 or pay to 100. These plans offer fully guaranteed benefits with no increase in premium, unlike a traditional plan. These plans pay out if you die, if you go on claim, or both. They're very, very popular. The third type of plan is for a much younger consumer, say age 30 to 55, where the key driver and motivator is to buy life insurance. Instead of getting, let's say, a $50,000 death benefit in a hybrid, they might be interested in buying $500,000 of universal life insurance, and we'd put a 4% long-term care rider on it, which means if they do go on claim, they'll get 4% of their death benefit, whatever it is, until you spend it down. These plans are usually paid for on a monthly basis as well. And you're underwriting for morbidity and mortality. You're buying two plans in one. So the key components, you get a tax-free death benefit, you got cash value growing, and you got long-term care that's tax-free down the road if you go on claim. The fourth type of policy I like a lot. I really think this is the direction that the long-term care business is going. This is an indexed annuity, very interesting. It offers 5 S&P fund choices in a fixed account and provides tax-free income if you go on claim. The annuity portion works like any other annuity. Say you put in $100,000, the value grows over time, you pass away, the beneficiary gets the account value. Very simple. If you go on claim, the carrier will pay out a monthly basis, income tax free for 5 years or 60 months, whatever happens to be in the long-term care pool of money, and they pay it out on a cash indemnity basis, which means you just get a monthly check. You don't send in any receipts whatsoever. The key to this plan, and it's very interesting, is this annuity is actually underwritten. You have a 30-minute underwriting interview with a long-term care underwriter, and there are no medical questions asked whatsoever. No blood, no urine, no DMV, no prescription check. This 30-minute Zoom call is just a cognitive and physical assessment. When that assessment's done, the underwriter is going to give that client one of 3 medical underwriting classifications: preferred, standard, or secure. So based on your age, how much money you're putting in, and the underwriting classification, that's what sets your initial long-term care pool of money. As an example, let's say you have a male 70 putting in 100,000 and they got a preferred classification. Their long-term care pool of money would start around $300,000. And there's no elimination period on this. You go on claim, you're going to start getting a monthly check right away. This policy allows consumers 55 to 80 to purchase. The minimum premium is $50,000. There is a 4-year vesting schedule on the pool of money. And if a consumer happens to own a non-qualified tax-deferred annuity today, and presumably out of the surrender charge period, you can do a 1035 tax-free exchange to this policy. Also, this policy comes with a wellness benefit that I know Richard loves. It's by a company called Assured Allies. And every client gets a help coordinator that helps them live a better, healthier, and longer life. So in summary, you can see that the consumer has many choices today in the marketplace. There's some very fine insurance companies out there providing product across the country. I would suggest if you're shopping, look for a long-term care pro. Look for the designation CLTC and CLU on their credentials and business cards. And so, Richard, that's all for me. Thanks for having me on the call.
Yep. Thank you, Patrick. That was a lot of great information. Before we move to our next presenter, folks, all their information, contact information, phone number, website, email is on our website, APlan2Age. Remember that it's the number 2, APlan2Age.org, on our partners page. And our next presenter. So we've talked about this. There are so many more caregivers in this country. I know it well. I've been one, and how tough it can be on the caregiver. And I want to introduce Sally Duplantier and let her take it away. Go ahead, Sally.
So, Richard, I'm delighted to be here. I'm madly taking notes because I am learning a lot as well. So, just as a brief introduction, I am a gerontologist, I'm a public health educator, and a researcher. And my researcher looks at this phenomenon of healthy aging. And as part of that, what I have studied is the health and well-being of family caregivers, particularly around dementia, family caregivers of dementia patients, but I think that my research is broad enough to be shared here. So earlier, Richard talked about a 45% increase in recent years in the number of caregivers, and he mentioned 63 million people in the United States, or 1 in 4, are family caregivers. Those numbers are going to rise exponentially given the projected aging of our population. By 2030, that number could be 75 million, and it could be 80 to 90 million by 2050.
Wow.
And I think that we need to start thinking about caregiving in a different way, given the fact that caregivers themselves are at much greater risk of mortality and morbidity. We need to start thinking about caregiving as a public health issue and not an individual issue or a family issue. Here's some data that I think is interesting. Caregivers, the act of caregiving itself, puts these individuals at higher risk of chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, depression and anxiety, as much as 40 to 60%, sleep disturbances, compromised immune systems, financial strain, we've talked a little bit about that, and even shortened lifespan. The thing is, as sobering as these statistics are, they don't really paint the picture of what it's like to be that caregiver, to walk a mile in their shoes. So that's what my qualitative research did. My research with other co-authors is we looked at kind of the lived experiences of caregivers. And in particular, why self-care is so difficult. We can tell caregivers like Richard, I'm sure you heard it when you were caring for, 4 parents. Oh, Richard, you need to take care of yourself. Well, it's not that simple. So it's interesting in the research that I did how caregivers define health and well-being. If I asked all of us here, we might say something like, well, it's eating well, it's exercising, it's getting enough sleep, it's engaging with friends. These family caregivers said, when I asked them, what does health and well-being mean to you? They said, time to myself, time to prioritize myself, time to think of myself. And even in saying that, they were racked with guilt. And because they felt selfish even wanting that. They paid lip service to food and exercise and nutrition. They did talk a lot about social engagement. So one of the things I heard them describe is this idea of being always alone and never alone, because that person was with them. Sometimes physically, they couldn't leave them home alone, but just always present. So they did crave interaction with the social community. And when we looked at this further, when we analyzed, well, why is this self-care so hard? We looked at things called the objective burden of care and the subjective burden of care. And the objective burden of care is something we already talked a little bit about. It's the ADLs, the activities of daily living. So caregivers are lifting, bathing, toileting, dressing. It didn't matter that much. They kind of skimmed over that. Even one woman who was black and blue because her husband tended to hit her when she was trying to do that. And what they really focused on, the thing that really got to them, was the subjective burden of their care. It was the emotional strain it took. It was the guilt. It was the regret. It was loss on so many levels, loss of relationship, loss of self and self-identity. They talked a lot in terms of what they used to be, who they used to be, and they no longer were. And we as researchers came to think of this subjective burden of care as this heavy mantle that couldn't be shed. It was like a mantle of armor from, the medieval days that simply couldn't be shed. So to tell caregivers, oh, take care of yourself, it's just not helpful. So I've thought a lot about what we can do as a group, as a collective. And I think some of this begins with a mindset shift. So from a healthcare perspective, we simply need to stop thinking of caregivers as invisible patients. We need to start thinking of them as additional patients. It is possible when we treat people, for example, or diagnose people for dementia or cancer, to also do a caregiver assessment, called a caregiver burden assessment. It is possible then to direct them to resources. You know, the ideal is somebody like a caregiver navigator, because Steph, as you identified, caregiving is a journey. And what you need today is not what you need tomorrow or next week. And it's overwhelming at first. And so starting to think not of individual care, but dyad care. And a great organization that's doing this is UCSF, the Care Ecosystem Model, where their entire approach to treating people with dementia is to treat the patient and the caregiver. I think the second thing we need to look at is funding programs that provide respite care. You know, caregivers are just so desperate to have some time off, but this isn't paid, not even in long-term. Well, I'm not sure about long-term insurance plans. I know that traditional Medicare and even Medicaid do not cover it. So this is challenging. And then there's a call to action on the part of employers and policymakers to make it easier for individuals to step away from work and take care of their loved ones. At a federal level, we have FMLA, the Family Leave Medical Act. It's 12 weeks, it protects your job, but it doesn't provide you with any income. In contrast, here in California, we have the CFRA, which is paid family leave. At least for 8 weeks, you get part of your salary, plus 12 weeks of job protection. And then I think for those of us who are providing services to people who are caregivers, we need to reframe self-care to energy care, because self-care just doesn't work. Energy care helps them run a marathon. It's not an indulgence. It prepares them for an endurance race. So that's something I'm working on in my own interaction with caregivers. And I think we just need to think that the future of aging isn't about who needs care, it's who's providing it.
Wow. No, awesome. Thank you, Sally. I very much appreciate this and all of our presenters. Folks, we have, if we're going to try and get out of here at the top of the hour, we have about 5 or 6 minutes for questions. I know there's some on our chat. Others may have that. Steph's going to run that. And then I have some parting words before we adjourn. Steph, go ahead.
I think all the questions that are in there right now have been answered, but if anyone has questions, feel free to either use the reaction to raise your hand. You can put something in the chat, or if there's a pause in the conversation, go ahead and mute yourself.
Everybody going to stay quiet? Come on, folks. I know for some of you, this is the basics, but as I've said, I've stood in front of thousands of people, and I'll tell you, 99% of them don't know the basics. So if we're going to actually be aging coaches, we have to be able to communicate all of this and a lot more. Any questions?
It's not so much a question. Well, this is a question. Is there any, it seems like all this is about planning, which Richard, you would do a really good job of educating people and to create counselors for people. But is there any counseling to be done for somebody in a situation that like, I need a nursing home right now, or I need help now? Like, is there any? Aaron, I'm also in St. Louis, and I sent you a thing on LinkedIn to find you.
Great. Yes, we can help you in the now too, for sure.
No, and I mean, there are a lot of people out there in this industry. There are care managers out. We connect to them on our website. It's something a lot of people, I mean, one of the things my wife said to me years ago when this was going on is there someone I can talk to? Is there someone that'll help me understand I'm making the right choices for my parents, for your parents? There's a lot of great care managers out there. Yeah, they cost money, but people don't know they exist. They're really awesome when the caregiver doesn't live near the care recipient. So yes, and we need to create even more counselors. other questions?
I have one, a really practical one. I have aging in-laws who are in their 80s in good shape. I don't even know how to broach this conversation with them, especially since my husband won't. But it's the things you're talking about. I mean, I do this like work for a living, and yet having that conversation with them about, hey, if mom passes before you, dad, what are we going to do? It's so difficult. Does anybody have practical advice about how to initiate this?
Anybody want to go before I jump in?
I mean, again, we can definitely help with that. We have templates, we do family coaching where we talk about that before we have the conversation with mom or dad or your in-laws. Are they resistant? Do we make it more like it's their idea? How do we approach this? I could say the
Yep.
same thing that you say, but because you're so close to the situation and maybe you're related, they don't want to hear it from a child or an in-law. But oh, I'm this expert or this, neutral third party. So
Yep.
we definitely walk through families on how to do that. Especially I do senior driving assessments. So I'm a speech therapist. I actually get in the car with seniors. And that by far is the number one thing that families and doctors don't want to touch. And so we teach the families how to have that conversation and how to introduce. So geriatric care managers, people like us, we definitely help with having that plan in place and that
Cool.
that storyboarding, basically, the format.
Yeah. It's so much easier when you advise people the importance of doing it than to do it yourself with your in-laws.
Yep. And what we have the family conversation right on our website. It teaches people how to start this conversation. I've been asked that so many times. The last thing you want to do is pick up the phone and go, Mom, we got to talk. What I've found over the years is if an adult child, irrespective of age, they could be 67 years old, 60 or 70 years old and be the adult child, ask mom or dad for advice. Normally that mom or dad is going to be receptive. What's going on with my child? What do they need? You just want to find out some basics. What do they want as they age? Where do they want to live? They're probably going to stay at home. Who do they want taking care of them if something were to happen? And the conversation can go from there. And we have a lot of the basics of how you talk to siblings, who has that conversation with mom and dad. And then it also works for mom and dad down to adult children. Okay, folks, as we get ready to wrap up so I can hopefully get you out of here on time, we want to really thank you for joining us for the very first national conversation on aging and care. We're truly honored you were part of this important kickoff designed to help us stay in control of how we and our loved ones age, where we live, and how the care that we receive is set up. As we reflect and prepare for future events, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We have a form on our website. I know there's another form. Please take a second, take a look at it, share your feedback. But in addition to that, we want to make sure we have your email because we're going to send all of you a certificate for being part of this first national conversation on aging and care. Make sure that and we are sure you're on your way to becoming an aging coach. Also, if you want, hit our email, info@APlan2Age.org. Make sure we have your email so we can get back in touch with you, get you the certificate. Do us a favor when you post, tag APlan2Age, remember the number 2, also tag National Conversation on Aging and start the conversation. As I've said, we are truly trying to create an army of aging coaches. Why? Because we have to have that many. We got to be able to impart knowledge to folks that want to get that knowledge from us, neighbors, family, friends, coworkers, like Bob did in that demonstration we gave you a while back. Our site was built to help you. It was built for everyone. Please use it. Tell people. Spread the word about what we're doing. We thank you again for being part of this growing movement. I got asked a question on the chat a while ago. Will there be more conversations? Yes. Every quarter, we're going to dive deeper into a lot of this subject matter and other subject matter. The next conversation, write this down, Tuesday, October 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's Tuesday, October 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're a nonprofit. I'm going to say a word that some people may not like. It's donate. We need to keep the lights on. We need to fund conversations like this. We need to fund everything we're doing. If that works for you, great. If that works for other people around you, awesome. You can donate right on our site. And never forget, the better prepared we are, the more peaceful the aging journey. Aging well starts here. Have a great day, folks.